So every now and then when I'm booting up my Nintendo Switch, I become extremely nostalgic, and even though I should be beating games like Tears of the Kingdom that I am prepped and ready to do, I decided late last night to play Donkey Kong Country on SNES via Nintendo Switch Online because the question started to become fresh in my mind again that it has been since 2014 that we have seen an original Donkey Kong project of any kind on any Nintendo console. Tropical Freeze is a great game in my opinion, and a very fun, enjoyable 2D, 2.5D action platformer. It scratches a lot of the nostalgia itches for the classical Donkey Kong style games, but definitely does more with the formula to make it enjoyable for modern audiences. But you may realize that Tropical Freeze, while it was re-released on the Switch in 2018, is originally a Wii U game from 2014. At the time of filming this video, we are in the month of July in 2023, and we have not heard anything when it comes to DK and what the next project might be. There have been long-standing rumors in terms of what Nintendo might be doing with Donkey Kong, and we will discuss some of those in this video. But what I want to do today is boot up my current run through of Donkey Kong Country with you all, one of my favorite 2D platformers of all time, period, and talk about what we may see Nintendo do with this franchise going forward, because unlike some of the other smaller, more niche franchises that Nintendo has definitely forgotten about over the years, like F-Zero, Kid Icarus, amongst many others, Donkey Kong is a household name and definitely a game that sells big numbers when you look at it from a business perspective. And I want to get on the same page with what, if anything, we can expect to see from DK anytime soon on the Nintendo Switch going forward. What's up, nation? Make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on your bell notification if you haven't already. And as mentioned, guys, today I'm feeling nostalgic. Last night I started feeling nostalgic for whatever reason. Really wanted to go back and play a classic DK game, but I would love it if I could actually play a brand new DK game on the Nintendo Switch. And that has me begging the question, where is this franchise in 2023? When you stop and think how long it's been since we've seen an original DK project, we will be playing today with the wireless SNES controller for Nintendo Switch Online. I highly recommend you guys, if you have any level of nostalgia for the SNES like I do, to go ahead and pick that up. We're taking damage right out of the gate, but we have 2 characters, so it is not a big deal. We will persist forward. But this game, you know, the thing about Donkey Kong Country and the entire series, I think some people would say that it's maybe a little bit played out and stale at this point in time. I don't completely agree with that sentiment. I really think that Tropical Freeze was something that took this classic formula that worked back from like the early 90s, yet it still was able to be fun and expanded upon in a year like 2014. That's why we haven't had a Donkey Kong game in the 2020s at all. And so I do think that while maybe Nintendo doesn't need to do this exact style game, and maybe they should give Donkey Kong the type of Kirby treatment that we saw with the Forgotten Land, I do think that that would work for DK. I also think that Nintendo could stand to use these kind of classic platformers, the more 2D style, kind of Mario Bros. Wonder being a good example of something that they came up with that completely reinvented 2D Mario as far as what we know right now. We may play it, it may feel more similar to New Super Mario Bros. And those line of games than we realize at this point in time, but I think if Nintendo lets their creative juices flow and go wild, I think that there's a lot that they could do with DK still, and I think that there's an audience for these classic 2D type of games. I think you'll see Mario Bros. Wonder sell incredibly well, and if there's ever been a time to release a DK game, it feels like now might be the right time, or at least at the end of this current Switch's life cycle, or maybe we have to wait until the launch of the next Switch. But we have rumors of like a DK expansion happening in the Nintendo theme park. I know believe in Japan will come first, and then eventually we'll get them here in the US, but all types of different things that you would want to cross promote, you know, basically make sure modern audiences know DK and love them as much as they should. And you know, we had the massive success of the Super Mario Bros. Movie where DK is a big focal point within that movie. It kind of just seems like there's never maybe been a better time to capitalize on some of what's going on with this franchise. And then to kind of tackle the rumor mill conversation, there's been various different sources that have claimed that something is happening with DK and that maybe it should have already been launched, but you can never really time things with Nintendo. And the only thing that I would say I'm somewhat confident in, because I haven't seen a lot of credible sources talking about a new DK game anytime soon, I would just say that Nintendo's probably doing something with DK behind the scenes at this point. That's pretty much a foregone conclusion in my opinion. I don't think that there's any way that they're not, and that they just haven't been working on anything DK this whole time. But in terms of when we might see that project, that's anybody's guess, and that's kind of what's frustrating about it, because again, to kind of tackle the conversation around how well this franchise can sell, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I should have looked this up before the video, but Tropical Freeze has upwards of 5 million copies sold. And, you know, while that's not groundbreaking history type numbers for a Nintendo franchise, it's still really solid. It's not something that sells in that 1 to 2 million range. I mean, I think you could argue that DK is technically going to be a safer bet to put out there and sell maybe even better than like your average Metroid game would do, and not to mention things like you know, for some forgotten series like F-Zero, like even though I want F-Zero GX to come back at the bare minimum and at least get some kind of remaster, you know, it is one of those franchises that no doubt it's not going to drive significant sales and significant numbers, so it makes a little bit more sense logically why Nintendo would be waiting on a franchise like F-Zero. But what doesn't make sense is waiting on a franchise like DK that actually sells really well in general. So I'm kind of perplexed with what Nintendo's doing for this franchise. I do think, you know, when you look at kind of those interviews that Ubisoft had with Sparks of Hope, kind of discussing how they were unhappy with the sales of the game and that Nintendo actually recommended to them to wait to bring out Sparks of Hope until the next gen successor to the Switch. I do think that's one of those tricky ones. He caught up to us and I didn't realize he was that close. That's one of those scenarios that I do think actually makes a lot of sense, because I think you kind of see it in Nintendo's release pattern. Even if there's something like a port that did come out from the Wii U, let's look at Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. You could argue maybe a new Mario Kart would be out on the Switch by now if 8 Deluxe was not selling so well, and clearly it is, and it continues to. So that kind of makes sense that maybe Nintendo wouldn't want to bring out a new Mario Kart game when they have one that has so much momentum, hence the booster course pass. But I do think that Nintendo does have something of a strategy with certain entries on a console to only release one per life cycle of said console. Let's definitely get switched to Diddy Kong here, because he is definitely faster. And I do think that's maybe what Nintendo's kind of thinking with the fact that we've had Tropical Freeze, that's their one release for Donkey Kong, which would lead you to believe that we can't expect any kind of new DK game on the current gen Switch. Good thing about that is I don't think we're going to be waiting past 2024 to actually have something that's new and playable in terms of a Nintendo console. So more than likely, by time we're looking at 2024, we should actually have new hardware of some sort, and I do think that the launch lineup, it might be more likely to expect a DK game at that point in time than it is right now at the end of the tail end, really, of the Nintendo Switch's life cycle. That said, at the time of filming this video, we of course have things like a September Nintendo Direct to look forward to, and there's no telling if Nintendo would decide to reveal a surprise DK game there. If they keep it 2D and don't go 3D, they should really have another entry out by now, in my opinion. You talk about the soundtrack from these classic SNES era games and just how flawless it is as you hear like the drums building in the background, and just the entire vibe and feel to this game. It was really ahead of its time. If you look at it graphically, the fact that this was out on the Super Nintendo was really incredible, and something that I forgot we couldn't damage him with our ostrich friend. You know, but it's one of those things that this was like a technical marvel when it first came out, and now it's still to this day I think holds up as one of the best 2D platformers of all time. So if you guys own NSO, don't sleep on the Donkey Kong Country games. You can go boot up 1 through 3 right now. I think 1 and 2 are definitely heads and shoulders above 3 in my personal opinion. I didn't enjoy 3 to the same level. I kind of just that's the one that out of all 3 I don't tend to boot up and replay through in entirety unless I'm really in the mood for it. So I do think that 1 and 2 though still to this day actually hold up as some of the most quality and challenging 2D platformers, and just an incredible experience all the way through, and flawless soundtracks and flawless, you know, just the vibe of the games. It's just truly top quality. So don't sleep on these games. I'm hopeful that we will get something DK in the near future. We will see if we do or not, but I wanted to go down memory lane with you all today and talk about really why everybody should be playing some kind of Donkey Kong Country game in 2023 on the Nintendo Switch. Get yourself an SNES controller if you don't already have one. Enjoy enjoy the classic soundtracks, especially if you are somebody who has nostalgia for this type of game and you grew up with it like I did. And let me know, really what I want to hear from you guys is, what direction do you want to see Donkey Kong go from here? Because clearly there's the 2D/3D conversation. Would you much rather see something kind of akin to what Donkey Kong 64 was, but maybe brought into the modern era? Or do you want to see kind of that Kirby Forgotten Land style gameplay loop for DK, and you think that's the right direction to go? Or are you somebody who really enjoyed Donkey Kong Country Returns and Tropical Freeze, and you really just want to see them go back to that formula once again, but maybe kind of spruce it up, similar to what we see happen with games like Super Mario Bros. Wonder, that is not out yet, but will be out later on this year? So regardless of your thoughts and feelings on everything we talked about today, I do look forward to hearing from you all in the comments down below before you leave the video, as I do look forward to getting a back and forth conversation started with you all around these topics. Go watch yesterday's video next if you haven't already, which is on screen right now. Also, make sure you like, subscribe, turn on your notification bell, and I will see you guys in the next video.